I got a call. And your dad's like, well, come see me. Come deer head shop. So I drove up there, and man, we sit there, and he's like, hey, I love Jeff to death, but we're going to make a change. He said, I want you to drive the 3-car. I'm like,
The following is a production of Dirty Mo Media. All right, so we're going to have a great conversation today with a guest that I'm looking forward to. One of the 3 Green brothers that have raced in the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series throughout the years. There's Jeff Green, who's been on the show, Mark Green, a great friend of mine who's still in the industry, and then David Green, who's coming in today. David won the Xfinity Series championship, raced in the Cup Series. He's now a technical inspector for NASCAR in the Xfinity Cup. He's kind of doing a little bit of everything. A really great guy. Want to hear his story. He's kind of one of those kind of dudes that's just been around and ground through it. And he's had a ton of connections, and no telling what names might get brought up in this conversation. Our paths crossed several times throughout the years in different ways, and he was, my career was affected or influenced by him or his brothers in some way or another multiple times. So should be a lot of fun. I've never really sat down and talked to David a ton, but I love the Green family, and I love the kind of people they are. Great folks. And so this should be one for us to enjoy. Let's get started. David Green has joined us on the Dale Jr. Download. Born in Owensboro, Kentucky. A lot of racers from Owensboro. Mm-hmm. Do you think the reason why is because of the location of the racetracks like Nashville Fairgrounds and some pretty respectable facilities where one might look for talent? Plus, Darrell Waltrip sort of.
Right. I agree on the racetracks. Darrell, I would add into that equation, right? Like you said, Nashville Fairgrounds, Louisville. Mm-hmm. Louisville, darn, they had like 2 or 3 racetracks. Yeah. One right downtown, one up in Charleston, Indiana, right across the river. You could really even look at Indy with IRP. Mm-hmm. And gosh, I think we're probably missing something somewhere else. But yeah, I think the racetracks had a huge bearing upon kind of the direction we all went, right? Yep.
There were the Green brothers, but also the Waltrips, Jeremy Mayfield. Your dad raced in the NHRA. Is that right?
That is correct.
How did the sons, and we're going to talk about your brothers quite a bit in this conversations, but how do y'all get interested in oval track racing if your dad's going to the drag strip?
Right. That was always a good question kind of throughout our career, right? So to start off right there, ever since I can remember being around, right, me being the oldest, Mark was 13 months later, then Jeff's another 6 years maybe. Mm-hmm. But I can remember going to the drag strip Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And one of my early memories were, we were in school all week long, right? And on Saturday morning was when the cartoons were on, right? Yeah. Didn't have them during the week like now.
That's right.
So I was all set up to go watch cartoons on Saturday morning, right? And Dad's like, no, you're coming out here in the garage. We get that Mother's aluminum polish, mm-hmm. and we get us a rag, and we polish the front wheels on the drag car, right? Get them all polished up. So being around drag strip all those years, I figured that was where we were all going to be heading, right? And to my knowledge, Dad never ran a lap in a stock car. Now, he'd race go-karts, and probably a step ahead of that a little bit was we all kind of got started in racing with go-karting, right? My uncle and Darrell were in the same class during high school, graduated
Darrell
together.
Who?
So,
your uncle and who?
My uncle, Clyde Potts.
Yeah,
and who? Clyde E.
And Darrell Waltrip?
And Darrell.
Okay.
Yeah. So they went to school together.
Damn.
And that's kind of got that go-kart craze going, right? And then we do the drag racing stuff with Dad. Round the clock, all week long, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's cool. Really love drag racing. But as things kind of got toward the end of his drag racing, I became old enough to have a license to to make a trip down the strip, Then along came Mark, then Jeff eventually. So we all kind of got a little bit of time in a drag car.
Did you?
He had like a super stock Camaro, probably a 150-mile-an-hour car on a quarter mile, something like that. Beach Bend down in Bowling Green was right down the road, great facility. But I quickly found out, along with my brothers, that within a few seconds, your race is over, right? So you mess it up one part of that back then, probably 10 seconds for a super stock car on a quarter mile, your day's done. No second chances, no nothing. So we quickly found out in stock car racing, man, you can mess up a couple times, right? And still have a shot at lap 200, 300, 400. So that kind of diverted, I think, our career paths into the stock car arena. So,
but you started racing go-karts at what age?
I was probably 14, 15-ish, fairly late, right? In this day and time, that's an old person, right?
That's normal, though, back then.
Right, back in the day, yes.
That's about, when people started.
Right, just prior to having a driver's license, right?
You got in it first, or?
Yes, my granddad there on my mom's side got us going in that direction, right? So Mark was right there along my side, right? Because we were fairly close in age.
Did you both race?
Oh yeah. We and unfortunately we were in the same class together all the time, right? Yeah. So the good thing about Jeff, he was down here in the junior class, right? Yeah. And Mark and I started out in basically the adult or prior to adult class, but it was Mark and I were head to head all the time. And then we could sit over and watch Jeff, right, and pick on Jeff or whatever. But Mark and I it was on from day one on go-karting.
Yeah. So how much success did you have in karting?
I think very successful later on. Early on, with the tutoring of our grandfather and my uncle, we got on the right path quickly. But the one thing that karting, I think, did for me personally was it helped me understand the vehicle, number one. We didn't have mechanics. We were doing all of our own work. We'd take the engine off, send it off to Lynn Haddock down in Chattanooga to do our blueprinting, stuff like that. But we were responsible for the go-kart. So I learned quickly on that parts and pieces better stay on it, and it better be top-notch to endure. And I think our races were probably 30 minutes, maybe it's a timed race. So that was a big advantage, I feel like, that I gained from go-karting. But you talk about super competitive.
Yeah.
Not just between Mark and I, obviously Jeff as well, and then just the whole competitive spirit of go-karting.
All road racing.
Correct.
What is your aspirations as a driver at that point? You're not racing stock cars. You're not anywhere near a path that might take you down toward NASCAR.
Right. A great question. It's something I look back at even today, because we hear drivers say, at 15, I knew I wanted to drive Cup one day, or I wanted to run Xfinity or the Busch Series. I'm like, I never thought that. I don't know what my brothers thought, but all I wanted to do, if I was in the junior stock class, I wanted to run an open class. And then I remember there's a time I wanted to run the dual engine class. And I always just wanted to go to that next step, whatever that was. Now, did I still have aspirations to run our local stock car track in a stock car? Maybe small, but I'm telling you, seriously, it was not on my radar. I just wanted to be the very best I could be at that class. Then I knew probably then I would have more confidence going to the next level. And, we weren't even thinking back in the day about making sponsors happy, right? We were just having a good time and wanted to get that trophy. That trophy meant so much.
How did you get introduced to the short track stock car world? Mark
actually was the first one to go to the stock car track.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, this is not right. I'm older than Mark. Why shouldn't I get the first shot, right? But I'm telling you, Mark was very good.
He was.
He was the guy that set the bar very high at Kentucky Motor Speedway. And so I think that really kind of got, obviously, myself looking at it, and then ultimately Jeff. And then I remember Dad bought a street stock car, and it was blue and yellow, and it had a number 2 on it.
Yeah.
And I'll have to dig that picture up and send it to you. But similar to your dad's car right there is a Chevy 67 Camaro, street stock. And I'll say, even to this day, the most fun ever, But anyway, that was my first start in street stocks at Kentucky Motor Speedway.
Same track?
Mark had already been out there a year running late models. And I'm like, man, I got to get ahead of him somehow. And I think each one of us kind of drove each other to go up, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of got us going there. But I think obviously Darrell running that track really got the ball rolling. Then when Mark went out there and Mark was whipping up on him,
yeah,
I'm like, this is where we want to go. So, and we found out that, it wasn't a 10-second race or a few seconds down that drag strip. We could mess up a time or two.
So you're just racing locally. How do you run in and get up with Mike Alexander?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting time in my career, right? So we were racing at Kentucky Motor Speedway. We ventured down to Nashville for the fairgrounds. I met Wayne Day. So we actually raced against each other. Wayne had a guy by the name of Jerry Sisko that drove for him. His brother Dave Sisko drove the Cup Series in the day.
Wow.
And so Wayne is down in Nashville, Goodlettsville, Tennessee, north of Nashville, 31W installation.
Yep.
So as I'm racing against Wayne, Jerry's kind of on his way of retiring, Jerry Sisko. And Wayne said, hey, why don't you come drive my car? I'm like, okay, this is going to be a lot better financially to do that, right? And so Wayne and I got hooked up, and actually in 1980, I moved from Owensboro to Nashville to go work for Wayne full-time.
Really?
We built chassis, we hung bodies, we had our own cars.
For other competitors?
Yes, other competitors, and Mike being one of them.
Yep.
So Mike was a huge part of my career along with Wayne, that we were building late model stock cars. We were building some Busch cars. He had his own Busch team, the number 84, action vans.
That's right.
But with Mike, we were doing it all right, and he was being successful in the Busch Series, winning races with cars that we built at Wayne Days. Bobby Hamilton, same way. He'll probably be a part of the story here in a minute as well. But Mike, so then unfortunately Bobby Allison got hurt in the Cup Series. So Mike was tabbed to sub for Bobby.
Yep. And
Mike came up to shop one day. He said, hey, I don't know what you're doing this weekend, but you're going to go to Langley. I'm like, I am? What are we doing? He said, well, you're going to practice my Busch car, and you're going to qualify it. And if something happens, you'll race that thing. So we're going to get comfortable. But probably I'm going to show up and race it. But you'll have your day one day. So we did that, Dale, I think about maybe 8 times that particular year.
From 1980 all the way up till 88, 89, he spent the majority of that time living in and around Nashville, racing short tracks, racing the fairgrounds, building race cars for, I'd say, 6, 8 years.
Yes.
What's amazing to me is there's a lot of people like you that didn't ever give up on that opportunity. It's different today, like the way we get these kids, and I mean, people were racing at 5 years old, and you got a Connor Zilich that's headed to the Cup Series for his 21st birthday. Someone would spend his whole adult life working toward that opportunity to finally get behind the wheel of a competitive Cup car.
Right.
But you had a big chunk of time where you were happy and content with your life, racing locally and helping, in this particular case, Mike Alexander working for the days. Did he ever not show up to one of those Xfinity races?
No, he showed up. he showed up every time. And back to comment prior to what you're just making a note of was, so I come from home where we worked the concrete plant, right? Get home, run out to shop, work to midnight, right? Didn't think twice about it. Now, all of a sudden, in 1980, I drive to Nashville, live in Nashville, and go to work for Wayne. I'm like, 7 in the morning, all day long, working in a race shop, cutting tubing, building chassis, hanging bodies, putting cars together, setting them up, go to the racetrack and race. The NASCAR All-American Challenge Series. And then we get into the Busch side of things. And but how interesting was for me, it's like, man, come 5 o'clock, I see the guys in the shop, like leaving, getting their lunch boxes, walking out the door. I'm like, where's everybody going? It was so interesting for me that finally to get to work on a race car all day long and even get paid to do it, right?
Yeah.
And some of it's your stuff, some of it's customer stuff, but I looked at it all as my stuff, right? But what an interesting time, right? So yes, a big chunk, and helping people, never really thinking, even to this point, I'm not saying, hey, I'm going to get to the Busch Series, I'm not going to do this, I'm going to do that. So just a great time. And Mike Alexander was a whale of a driver.
He was easy to be around. I don't know him very well.
Really?
Not at all. Now I was around as a kid when he was running that 84 Action Vans car, when he drove for Dave Marcus that year in the 80s, when he gets called up to drive Bobby's car. I was, and even recently, maybe even a year or a year or two ago, he's still at the fairgrounds trying to race a late model.
Yes.
So I've been aware of him, but and he had there was this opinion that when he got called up to drive Bobby's car, that he was ready and that he was capable.
Yes.
How come you think that things didn't work out for him? I know he had some injuries and different things, but
yeah, I think twofold. Number one, the injury at Pensacola. Wayne and I were running our super down there at Snowball Derby when Mike unfortunately got hurt. But I think the other part of it was, Mike had always been a team owner. He had his own stuff. He was tough, man.
Yeah.
He was. Many times he had his crew polishing the toolbox, right? Polishing the jack stands. I mean, he was that kind of guy. But his performance on track spoke for it too, right? So I think it was twofold, a little bit of that. But I think probably the injury probably surfaced to be the deciding factor that where it all went.
The Day family owned an Xfinity car, am I right?
Yes, we actually built a car in-house. Here we are, building the cars for Bobby Hamilton after Mike's. We first started building some for Mike. We built some for Bobby Hamilton. And then actually built some for Bobby and Terry Labonte. So then Wayne's like, heck, let's build one in-house, right? Yeah. Oldsmobile was the body style back then, and the V6s, right? So we built one, and I think we might have, I forget where our first race we might have went to, but chances are we might not have qualified for it, right? Because back in the day, there was 50,
lots
60 cars.
Yeah. Red 16?
Yes. Yeah. Actually, that first one could have been white with red numbers, 16.
Yep.
And
I remember that being their scheme.
Yes.
For all those years. So you ran a couple of starts for him in the Busch Series. You finally get your chance to get behind the wheel. A lot of mechanical issues, just buggy stuff, being a
small team. Yeah. Just not kind of out of our wheelhouse, so to speak.
Yeah.
Actually going there as a team. But, I think it was great building blocks for things to come. But what an experience. I got to do those 8 races. Thank goodness we qualified for every race, didn't use a provisional, and just learned so much, all the way from how a championship caliber team operates. And then here, Wayne and I can use those same things that we're learning onto our own car, and just from one end to the next, all the way to how you sit in a race car.
Yeah.
Which that'll be a story later on too. I always get accused of how I sit in a race car, and then and I didn't mind putting my own seats in after that. And you and I probably have stories about that as well. But just a great opportunity that led to the Filmar ride in 1991.
Who drove that car before you?
Bobby Hamilton.
Right. Did you have a relationship with him?
I did.
Do you think he went to bat for you?
He probably did.
So the 8 Filmar car would end up becoming, in this little brief moment of the sport's history, this little pipeline.
Yes.
Right?
Correct.
And I don't know if y'all thought about it like that then.
We didn't.
But he certainly had just gotten a cup ride.
Yes.
And now you're getting in that car, and you got to think, crap, if I do this, this, and this, and check this box and this box, who knows where this could go?
Well, sort of did. But, gosh, that's still a huge mountain, a huge task ahead of you, right? And I've still got it in my mind that understanding the whole process and being able to build cars and doing all this, how many parts and pieces are involved. Now we're starting to think about sponsorship.
Oh, yeah.
And I was blessed with the Filmar opportunity. That was good for 1 year for me personally. But, man, we came out of the gate strong, right? Just a really quick story. Bobby Hamilton, we were getting ready to go test Daytona. And back then there was like a test in December and 2 in January and manufacturer's test. So Bobby and he came up to Wayne's before I went there full time. He said, "Hey, when we get ready to do that Daytona test," he said, "I'm going to call Mike Fryer that built the engines, V6 Buick." He said, "I'm going to tell Mike." I said, "I want them to put in the Martinsville engine, because that Martinsville engine I just ran to finish out the year was strong." He said, "But now you've never been to Daytona." He said, "I want them to put that engine in that car. You just go down there and test. He said, "It's probably going to be off a little bit, but you're going to get laps." So we went down there, we tested. We were pretty good the first test. Each test we got a little bit better, but we never changed the engine. So the mindset was, after the final test, we were going to send the engine back to Mike. He's going to freshen it up, put the Daytona package in that thing, right? So, but we had to make a decision when we left that final test. We were like P1 or P2. And so we just left it as is. I think he rebuilt it, freshened it, but we left it as is and went down there and sat on the pole. Man, things were great. And obviously, I think that weekend was the first weekend I got to meet your dad. And we started our relationship. And it's funny, we back during that schedule, I think practiced on a Monday, qualified on a Tuesday, but we were there like for 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
So I'm starting on the pole. Jack Sprague is second, and your dad's third. So all week I think I woke up thinking, oh gosh, here we are. We're going to take off. We're going to get into turn one. Dale's going to put me in the middle. I'm going to be 3 wide. Never started a race there at Daytona or nothing, right? And back then, I don't know how much drafting we did throughout the week like we do now. But that did not happen in the race, but I had fears of that happening all week long. But your dad was good about it. He's like, he said, "Hey, buddy, that car's pretty fast." He said, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, it is." He said, "Just keep her going straight. We're going to be fine.
Yeah.
I'll be right there with you." And sure enough, he was, right? So it was a good start to 1991.
Yeah.
Probably about the 5th race, we ran Bristol. I ran second. I don't remember now if your dad had won or Jimmy Spencer had won or it was reversed, but I remember I ran second, and I think it's your dad, and Jimmy Spencer was third, and I got huge satisfaction. I really felt, okay, maybe now I'm here and I can be there, and I've got a career in the Busch Series, and who knows, one day maybe Cup. Because the Daytona pole was one thing, right? But I needed to do it in the race to satisfy me. Had a great race at Bristol. Our very next race was Lanier, Georgia. And I remember also it was a standalone Busch race. But still we had probably 50 cars show up, right? But I think the Cup Series was off in Michigan. And, man, we were able to win that race that night. And I remember the first person, when I walked into the media center after winning the race, a reporter said, "Well, hey, it's a good race today, but there was no Cup drivers here." And it kind of hit me. Like, I said, okay, I agree. But, hey, last weekend, when I ran second to one of them and had one in my rearview mirror, that felt pretty damn good.
Yeah.
And so tonight feels good too, right? But we were very fortunate that team was on it. They had a year or two with Bobby Hamilton, and just plug a driver in, and we were on our way then, I felt like.
Hey, it's Dale Jr. Did you know that we've got brand new merch from our Stars, Stripes, and Beers collection available now? We've got tanks, tees, beach towels, and more just in time for summer. Check it all out at shop.dirtymomedia.com. I didn't race against you a ton, but your record speaks for itself. Your ability, wins, championships, and all that. There's no doubt about your ability. What I think I was surprised to learn is when Mark came into the Xfinity Series finally, that's kind of when I was there as well. And I watched him pretty closely, and I thought, man, he's better than I think people give him credit for. Because the general, like you knew, because you grew up in that family, right? But the general like thought of Mark was like, oh, they got a third brother? Okay, and wow, he does pretty decent. That's a pretty decent run.
Right.
None of us, I certainly didn't know how, what he'd been doing back home. I certainly didn't know why his deal took so long for him to get there. But I do know when he got behind, he got in the 37 and a couple other opportunities. Like he ran really solid, and I just feel like that Mark's career as a driver is kind of one of them, what could have beens.
Correct.
And I don't know, that's always kind of bothered me a little bit that he didn't. There's a lot of drivers out there that'll never get that chance to even get to the Xfinity side or get to that level that probably will never know had what it took.
Correct.
He's one of those guys that actually kind of did get there, and we just didn't really get to see what he's capable of.
Yeah, I think obviously thankful to Clarence Brewer that started Bruco. Yep. So Mark was there on the on ground zero with Bruco. Timberwolf, a local company there in Owensboro, jumped on as sponsors. But I would agree. And I think Jeff touched on it many times. I know I have too. Is Mark set the bar, and he set it very high from the driving side, right?
For both of you.
Exactly, absolutely. And then I think probably, having a family, starting a family is very important, as we all know now. But I think this was one thing that Mark chose to start with first. Then that kind of, delayed his opportunity. But thankful for Clarence for that to happen. And then eventually Mark got over here in North Carolina. And I joked that, eventually Mark said, hey, wait a minute. I was first one. David went. Jeff went. I'm going. So here we are all over here now. So
Mark still races. Plays around those Legends cars.
Legend cars, yeah.
And he works over at Rev.
Yes.
Managing a lot of operations over there. So
yes,
I see him every now and then. And I didn't know you as well, but I did know Jeff a lot from back when he drove for Dad. And then when me and Mark raced against each other in the Xfinity Series, Mark was a really, really nice guy. Like I was a little introverted. Mark didn't let that stand in the way of us having a conversation.
Right.
And I always appreciate that about him. Always the way that, y'all all are three different people, but all of you seem to have really great manners, easygoing, calm demeanors. So your parents and your family and your environment was conducive to a pretty solid upbringing.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
that means a lot. Having two brothers in racing, and we're all kind of doing the same deal, fighting for the same real estate at times, right?
Yep.
Very challenging, and I think throughout our careers on the driving side, that took its toll a lot.
Yeah.
I know Jeff and I became further apart.
How did that happen?
Well, I think he was driving the famous number 3.
Yeah.
Well, even before that, Jeff was. It's almost like what Mark and I experienced through go-karting, the local track at Kentucky Motor Speedway, and then getting into the Busch Series. Jeff took all those things, trials and tribulations we experienced, and put those into one package, and boom, came out of the gate. You know, he set a track record, so to speak, right? Yeah. Coming right out of the gate. So, and then the unfortunate part of it, and I can even say this with Mark, is kind of the heyday of all of our careers. We're right there in one time frame.
Right.
It's like I wish that Mark and I would have been separated by 10 years, then Jeff another 10.
Yeah.
That'd make me really old. But anyway, and then we could experience those in a calmer atmosphere. But I'm telling you, and you know, we've grown closer now after we've retired.
Yeah.
On the driving side. And that means a lot too, right? That looking back at it, it wasn't fun. Now, I will say this. At the racetrack, I was always Jeff's biggest supporter. I would talk to him about racetracks, talk to him about setups, because I worked in the shop. I helped my guys set up the Slim Jim car, right? And I'd always try to help him. And then we'd go to fairgrounds, for example, and Jeff was the king at the fairgrounds. And then I think Jeff, and we know this, right, is you go to your home track, everything's on the line, all your people are there, you want to try really hard. And sometimes we over-try. To me, every time we went to the fairgrounds to race the Busch Series, Jeff just tried so hard to do whatever that sometimes it hurt, right?
Yeah.
But I would always tell him the truth. And then some of his team members, I think, thought at one point I was kind of fibbing to him. You know, I have codes for springs and all this kind of stuff, right? But I can honestly say I always told Jeff the truth. And because he's my little brother, right? So we want to end up 1 and 2 across the line, or in this case, if Jeff's Mark's running, we can be third, 1, 2, 3. And we almost had that happen at Myrtle Beach. I was driving a Caterpillar Busch car, and we ended up sitting on the pole and ended up winning the race, and Jeff was maybe third or fourth in the 3 car. And then, but yeah, we almost had the perfect scenario, perfect storm one time there.
So it's interesting that you said that it was difficult at times, because you obviously, the rest of the world's not privy to that part of y'all's life and the experience that you and him are having as brothers. From the outside looking in, I would have said Jeff's opportunities, because he also drove for the Day Enterprise a time or two, but like Jeff's opportunities were assisted by the success that you had, much in the way Michael's Waltrip's opportunities were assisted by his brothers, not only his notoriety, but like, hey, you know, maybe there's some of the same genes in there, right? If one, you know, we'll do that right now with the Quapples, right? With Caden and Carson. Carson's a solid-ass race car driver. I think he's got what it takes. I mean, he's probably got it. Caden's got that too, you know. Travis has raised them both. So, yeah, and it's interesting because you know, Jeff would probably get mad at me for saying it, but I feel like that, you know, once he gets, I guess, to the Xfinity level or even the Cup level, like the rest is up to him for sure. But like from the late models or running the local weekly stuff at the fairgrounds up until he lands that 3 ride in 96 or whenever that was, 95, I feel like that you influenced that even so slightly, in the same way that, you know, you said, hey man, we ran that track and Daryl's, you know, Daryl having raced that short track was a big deal. So, you know,
if that was happening, I mean, I think deep down it's like, hey, you always want to kind of help open a door, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, not that it's unique, because we have a lot of brother acts in racing, right? The Bodines and
it isn't unique. And that's
like,
why I think it's more, you know, interesting that while I feel like, you know, one may be assisting the other, and hell, if he goes and runs great and kicks ass, that can in turn help you as well.
Exactly.
Back the other way.
Yeah.
But And he does have this hard-headed independence.
Jeff.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
It is hard.
Oh, yeah.
He is.
Yeah.
He is. I know what I'm doing. I know what needs to happen here.
That's probably what helped break us away a little bit, right? Not being as close as I feel like we should. Looking back at it now, I wish I'd have hugged him every time we went to the racetrack and jumped in to do battle, right? But most time I was like,
sure,
I'm going to get you today.
Yeah. You end up having a really solid year with the Filmar team.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the season, though, they let you go?
Yes, there was some sponsorship issues and didn't ask a lot of questions. But I do know it was December-ish, early December.
Late.
And as you well know, that's tough. And I'm sitting here thinking, okay, well, we had a pole. We won a race as a rookie, I think in my 6th full-time start of that year. And we were leading the Rookie of the Year. Martinsville was our last race. We lost a motor halfway through the race. Jeff Gordon and I were going back and forth. And sidebar to all that is Jeff was rookie that year, and I was. We probably had a couple more in there too. But Jeff was like 17, 18, and I'm like 33. I'm like, but I was enjoying every second of it, learning from Jeff. And but I knew that wasn't going to be enough to secure Rookie of the Year. Now, if we'd have finished it all off, that'd have been maybe a different story. But quickly, I got the news in December. Went back to Owensboro, 2 hours away, and even thought about talking to Wayne again. But I just wanted to let everything settle because I'm thinking, hey, man, what a successful rookie year, and then this happens, and I'm like, man, if this is what big time auto racing's all about, I don't know if I can handle this.
Yeah.
And so I went back home, spent the holidays, and just kind of figuring out what I want to do, right? And phone rang, Bobby Labonte. Bobby's like, hey, I just heard the news. This was probably a day or two after I got let go, but he said, hey, I heard the news. First thing first, you need to be driving. After a year like that, you need to be driving. But right now, I need some help.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. So I thought about it over Christmas and called him back. He said, all right. He said, head on over. So I drove over January 8th.
Where are they at?
In High Point.
Okay.
Just worked there throughout 92.
The whole year.
The whole year.
As a mechanic. What was
and spotted.
And spotted.
Spotting's kind of come along then.
What is it like? I've heard stories, but what is it like working for
Bob
Senior? Yeah.
Bob Senior. I would say more like probably working for Tony Uri Senior.
Fiery,
to the point, and record speaks for itself.
Mm-hmm.
I learned so much from Bob. But just a hardcore racer, right? Mm-hmm. Number one, we weren't going to be a pound or two light. We weren't going to have a spoiler that maybe flexed in the air.
No, legal?
Legal Eagle. Legal. Now,
is this Bobby Labonte's first or second year in the Busch Series?
This would have been Bobby's second year, I think.
Yeah.
90. Now, he won in 91, so this might have been his third year in 92.
Gotcha.
Bobby had won.
And they needed some help.
To championship. So he needs some help. And but I think there's some other ulterior motives that we'll get into. But went there, and Bobby's like, hey, I'm still back in Kentucky before I drive over. He's like, hey, he said, if you stay there, you're going to be out of sight, out of mind. I want you at the racetrack. And I promise you, if Jack Ingram calls at race number 3 and needs you to drive a car, you're going to go do it. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So went over there. Plus, I needed a job, right? So went over there. I worked. Jack ended up calling. I mentioned him because he did end up calling, not the third race of the year, but some point in time prior to midseason. And I went in and talked to Bobby, walked in the office, shut the door, and Bobby, he's like another father to me and big brother that I didn't have. And And I kind of told him about my phone call, and he's like, the Bobby way, right? And he's like, let me think about this, but I think we'll pass on this one. And I'm like, okay. So I passed on it because he said I needed to stay with him, go spot and do all this. And I was like, damn. So about September of that year, before Hickory, Bobby, it's on a Monday, I think, Bobby says, hey, don't make no plans for tomorrow at lunch. We're going to go do lunch. I'm like, okay. Because usually we just ate at shop in the break room, right? Because Bob said, we got work to do, man. We got to go. So Monday after work, Bobby come out there and says, yeah, don't forget now we're doing lunch tomorrow. I said, but bring some nice clothes. I'm like, okay. So I got clothes. We took off. We're going to Raleigh. And I was like, well, what are we doing? He said, well, I'm going to take you over to the Goodmark Foods Slim Jim, parent company for Slim Jim, Goodmark Foods. He said, we're going to go over and just do a little season recap with Dick Miller, the president of Goodmark Foods. I'm like, okay. Still, I had no idea. So we're sitting in Dick's office there, and big old desk, and Bobby's like, yeah, I need to let you know that I've got this offer on the table to go cup race next year with Bill Davis, Maxwell House, and all this stuff to Mr. Miller. And maybe they'd already had this planned out. But Mr. Miller's like, yeah, congratulations. He says, now, we're still on for next year, right? Slim Jim and the Busch car and all this stuff. And he said, oh, yeah. And Bobby's like, yeah, but we probably need to think about a driver. And Dick's like, yeah. Well, I'll be open for any conversations, in the next coming weeks or so. And Bobby's like, well, I brought him with me. And there I am sitting, right?
Yeah.
So that was my introduction to
the idea.
Well, no, it's
all
happening.
Of it. Yeah.
It's real. I'm going to drive the 44 Slim Jim car in 1993.
Yeah.
Like, holy smoke.
Best car in the garage.
Holy smoke. and man, I've been working on this thing all year. And Dale, honestly, I say Bobby had all this planned out. And what a savior to my career, right, is he brought me on board to work on this car, build these cars, hang bodies, work with the guys in the shop. He was prepping me for getting in that thing. And when I rode in that thing, and I mentioned a lot of times, it's like we just pulled Bobby's name, because I put the decals on the car too, right? I love that. Still love that today. But I was able to pull Bobby's name off and put my name on, and moved the seat around a little bit, and we're set to go in 1993. So here Bobby missed out on the championship, and now he's giving it all to me. I'm like, oh, man, this is going to be some pressure here. So we get to that point, we fire off in 93, and, man, we led the points for a long time and had a couple little misfortunes at the end of the year, blew a tire, and heck, I broke my scapula a couple times with some blown tires, and that might have been part of it too. But anyway, we failed a third at the end of the year. But my first season with driving the Slim Jim car, we were third. But we had a lot of momentum for down the road.
That's painful, breaking your shoulder blade.
Whew. And I did it twice.
Yeah.
And Bobby did it. And, and probably you did too. And
those old seats, that seat ran right across the.
Oh my gosh, very painful.
Yeah,
very painful.
You won a championship in '94. I remember this part of the history of the sport quite well. Out of the success of driving that car, you talked about the relationship that you created with Dad. Right, as soon as you get into the sports, you're in and around all these figures, and he's one of them. There was a. This is something that I didn't know. There was an opportunity to drive that three car.
Yes.
In the Xfinity Series.
Yep. I got an offer mid-season of 95 from Buzz McCall on the Caterpillar Busch team. Ward Burton had drove that car just a handful of races.
Yep.
And, the pay was good as well.
Yeah.
Just all those little things, right? And So, but man, you talking about a tough decision or tough time knocking on the door to walk into Bobby's office and say, hey. But I'm telling you, at first he was not very happy. but I look back at that thinking, okay, that's my, that's my big brother.
Yeah.
It made me feel good, and still to this day he's my best buddy, right? Mm-hmm. And we talk all the time. But so I went to do that deal, and then so Ward had drove the Caterpillar Busch car and a handful of races. And in 96, they're going to go full-time with myself driving. So a couple of things is brand new team.
Yeah.
And we got to run all the races. And we came out of the gate pretty good.
Yeah.
Really good. And we had a great engine program with K-Tech. And the car side of things, we were still trying to find our home with chassis and stuff like that, right? And but we had a couple of good cars. We won Hickory. We won a couple races right there. Then toward the end of the year, about September again, is Caterpillar. Caterpillar wanted to go cup racing in 97. So obviously Buzz said, heck yeah, we're going to go cup racing.
If I remember correctly, you're in position, you're battling for the championship when this decision was made, and it sort of took the attention away from that a little bit.
You're correct, and this is very similar.
But it was a sacrifice that was necessary to get the team into the Cup Series.
Correct. Very similar to maybe one stage of Jeff's career when the same thing happened, right?
Yeah.
And this is really ironic and kind of odd when we start to talk about it, right? So, yes, September, Caterpillar wanted to go cup racing. So we had the number 95 Cat Busch car. Then in 97, it was going to be the number 96 Cup car. So we had just agreed to go cup racing in 97. Then it was about a week later, I got a call. And your dad's like, where you at? I'm like, well, I'm working in the shop on the Cat car. And he's like, well, come see me. Come Deerhead shop. So I drove up there, and man, we sit there, and he's like, hey, and I don't even know if I knew at that particular point that Jeff was not going to be there.
Yeah.
And your dad said, first thing he said, man, I love your little brother to death. Love him to death. But in racing, and I'm still trying to learn, all the nuances of, I think you would agree too, back in the beginning, it was just us driving the car and we're just thinking about us. Well, all these ingredients to the team, personnel, all this stuff. So your dad said, I love Jeff to death, but we're going to make a change. And he said, I want you to drive the 3 car. So let me interject, maybe right before all this happened, we were at Darlington in the fall. I'm in the Cat Busch car. And we're second or third in practice, and I hated practicing at Darlington. Tires wear out. Mm-hmm. They make you go out there and run. I think you would say the same thing. Yep. I love to race there, but hate to practice. Mm-hmm. So I'm out of the car. We were kind of walking around because we got an hour of practice, and your dad hollered at me, come over, and he said, hey, Jeff's getting ready to go out and make a run here. You doing anything? I said, no, we're pretty much done for this practice. He said, hey, I want you to make a lap in the 3 car. I'm like, okay. He said, Jeff always complains about the engines. He said, but I don't know where to do and what to do with it, right? How can we make it better right here today? He said, I want you to make a couple laps. I said, you sure? Are you going to tell Jeff?
Yeah.
And he's like, everything's fine. So Jeff, you know how he was. And so Jeff came in, and he kind of looked at me like, what are you doing standing here, like in your Cat uniform? And I knew right then
he didn't know.
He didn't tell Jeff. Yeah. So I jumped in that thing. We went out there. And again, remember, I hate practicing at Darlington, right? And they didn't put new tires on it either, right? So we went out there, and I'm like, oh, man, I can't scratch this thing, the 3 car. And we run a couple pretty good laps and come in, and your dad had told me, like, hey, when you get through running, come straight to the trailer. I'll meet you in the trailer. So got out, went in there. He said, all right, what do you think? I'm like, did I do pretty good? Or because I was really cautious, right? But, sometimes being cautious is good.
Yeah.
And I ran pretty good times, right? And Dale's like, well, what do you think? I'm like, I'll be honest with you. I said, if I could take my engine and put in your car, we'd be bad to the bone.
So the motor's not good.
Well, I didn't say that way, right? So Dennis Fisher's in there.
Oh, yeah, he's in the trailer.
Oh, yeah, he's in there. And Dennis built the engines. And he was a quality engine
guy.
Right?
He was a great
guy.
Yes.
And really all it boiled down to is some of the throttle response wasn't there and had a little burp. And maybe Jeff had explained it in a certain way. But so Dale, I leave, and everything's fine. And your dad's like, get on out of here, right? So I went on, did my deal. So we're qualifying. And I remember I went out like 5 to go in the lineup. And maybe I'm second. No, I'm third. And there's about 2 or 3 cars to go. And you know how it used to be. It's like, man, I really want to stay on the inside here at Darlington. I don't want to get bumped by one guy and move to the outside. So I survived one guy, but the last car to go out was the 3 car. I'm like, okay, maybe I can stay on in the inside lane. Hopefully he'll be fourth. Hopefully he'll be 4th or 5th or something, right? Sucker went and sat on the pole. I'm like, whoa. So I had to go back over, like, did y'all change anything? Oh, yeah, we just did some stuff to the carburetor. Okay. So I really felt good then for my brother, right?
Yeah.
He's got him a pole, and if I could help out, fine. But then I also understood how well that car drove, right? And so then fast forward into my meeting over at Deerhead Shop. He said, I want you to drive the 3 car. I'm like, and I didn't even think about first saying, hey, we just signed a deal to go cup racing. What came to my mind was, that's my brother, Yeah. And your dad's sitting across from him. He's sitting there, I'm sitting here. And your dad had this look on his face like, that's right. I mean, it's really surreal. And one of the moments I wish I could have taped and memorized even better, but I'll never forget that moment. And I'm like, Dale, I said, man, I had a great time in it in the 4 laps. I drove it to Darlington. I'd love to drive it everywhere. But I do understand, but man, that's my brother. That's my youngest brother. And I'm very proud of him. And but now, did I think about after that? And I never told Jeff that. Did I ever think about that afterwards? Like, man, I should have took that? Yes.
Yeah.
I thought about it. Because when we went cup racing on the Caterpillar team, we were like a 1-year-old full season Xfinity Busch Series team going cup racing.
Yeah.
It was not good.
Not good.
But that was an opportunity. And obviously Steve Park ended up driving it.
Yeah.
But
they ended up getting Hutter engines too.
And
you should have said to Dad, I know you probably couldn't, but he had his own experiences with those same Fisher engines.
Yeah.
Dennis was amazing as an engine builder, but that, for whatever reason, they were struggling to make power with those cars at that particular time. But,
on that particular day, it was just some tuning, right? Maybe a little deeper, but but what a pivotal time in my career personally.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, you that kicks off your cup career, right? And you talked about how things didn't go well with the Caterpillar team. They released Larry Hendrick called you. They released Steve Grissom from the 41 and wanted you to run the last few races of the season. You signed a deal to run the full year in '99
with the Kodiak car. Yep.
That deal was kind of clunky around that particular time.
Yeah.
And it kind of had always been with Larry and his team. You ended up leaving in the middle of the year or after a race at Richmond?
Yes. I think after another broken scapula, I had to sit out a week. And, man, back in the day, if you missed a week, they might be looking for somebody different.
Sure.
And sure enough, that was the case. Larry was a great guy. I think really put a lot into his race team, but just never got around the corner,
right?
Like you said, to be consistent and smooth. But yeah, unfortunately, yes.
You'd sign a deal with Tyler Jett. Who was that?
So that was Tim Beverly. Rich Bickle had been driving that car. The number 45, 1010.
The collect call stuff or whatever.
345 or something like that.
That purple car.
Purple car. So I did like the last 10 races maybe of that year with that car. The first race or two, they had been building their own engines, and I think that's what Rich Bickle had an issue with, right? Engines. So the first two races we ran, things weren't real good, but new enthusiasm, new team. James Ince, if you remember him, he was crew chief. And the uniqueness of this team was James was crew chief. We had Chad Knaus as a shot guy. We had, Jay Guy over there working. Yeah. There was a lot of who's who on this particular team. And James' philosophy was a little bit counter opposite of Bob Labonte, is maybe more like a Harold Holly. I'm going to try to get it through. If it gets through, it's going to be good.
Yeah, he's going.
We're just
aggressive.
Yeah, really aggressive. And as I walked up to that car to sit in it the first time at the racetrack, and you know this feeling, I felt like I was 2/10 faster before I even got in it.
Yeah,
this thing's all twisted up. The 10, 3, 4, 5, all the graphics were cool. Yeah, this thing, and it's a Pontiac.
Yeah,
this thing is right. So then after about the third race, thereon, we got Hendrick engines. So probably our bright spot of that was Homestead.
Sitting on the pole.
Yeah, so we'd ran Homestead on, this was been the second version of the track, the flat corners. We went down there and tested, and we were pretty good. We just made small tweaks to it. And again, James and Chad and that whole group, the Hendrick engines, the Pontiac, I can't explain how wicked looking that body was, right? So we went down there, sat on the pole, and was very tickled till I think Rusty Wallace made a comment in the media center post qualifying to some effect of like, well, if you're in a Pontiac today, anybody could drive a Pontiac. Oh yeah. John Andretti was second, and I think possibly Bobby was third in the Gibbs car. But Pontiacs did make up the first 4 spots, but that was a little offensive, but I got over it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we ran okay in the race. But yeah, my Cup career, just we never got all 8 cylinders going. It seemed like, as happy and excited as I was for the Cat deal to go Cup racing, and what a great sponsor. It just never materialized. To where we needed to be.
Around 2002, you replaced Ricky Hendrick in the Busch car Ricky was driving for the final 6 races of the season. You were his driver coach. You're at a test. He goes and runs a run and comes in and says he's done driving race cars. He had this was after the injury he had I think at Vegas or somewhere. He wrecked.
Yes.
And had an injury to his right arm.
Yes.
So, and I know that Rick had mentioned that coming back from that and it just really kind of set into him that maybe he wanted to go do something else. But that had to have been pretty you had to probably go, yeah, right, whatever. You're going to be fine.
Right. Well, in 2000, 2001, I drove the 34 car, and that's how I met Ricky. He was doing some partial Xfinity stuff.
You drove the CC
Weller 34. Yeah. And things were good there. Just never able to win, but we had Hutter engines. Things were good. Then, yes, we were at Atlanta at that test. and we broke for lunch, and Ricky come up in the lounge and just said, I think I want to do something different. So it was a shock to me.
Said this to you, just you by yourself?
Yes, it was myself and, gosh, I'm forgetting the name, Ken House.
Okay,
remember Ken?
Yeah, I know Ken.
Ken was up
Godfather.
there. Yes. Up in the lounge, and I think Ken and I both kind of looked at each other like, ooh. So after lunch, I threw Ricky's stuff on and jumped in. We made a couple laps, and I wasn't totally comfortable in the car just jumping in at that test, right? I mean, it's a fast
racetrack.
You remember back in the day,
Damn
new
right.
pavement.
Yeah.
So I was on the edge, right, and can't tear this thing up. So I remember we left the track. I called Rick. I'm like, Rick, you probably already heard this, but this is what Ricky said. And I said, but my personal feeling is, because I'm his driver coach, right? I'm like, I think this time tomorrow, he's going to come back, right? And he's going to say, hey, I was just having a moment that day at Atlanta. So got off the airplane, and I'd missed a call from Rick. And he said, call me. And so I called him. He said, no, Ricky's stepping aside. And we want you to drive it the rest of the year. So in 2002, I didn't have anything solid, right? I just left the 34 in 2001, was sitting there idle in 2002, trying to put things together. Then this all happened, right? So drove that car the last few races, knowing each time I was auditioning for this thing, right? And I told Rick, I said, I'm just going to be point blank. This is not David Green style, but I'm just saying I'm auditioning for this car. GMAC was on the car. And man, Dale, I can remember going to Charlotte, which hadn't been one of my better racetracks, and rolling out there in practice. And that was back in that era to where we was probably turning $9,000. We had no gear rule. And this thing's all twisted up. I mean, it's nice, right? And I think I ended up running 3rd, 4th, 5th, something like that. Shoot, I never even got close to that before, right? And this thing is so driver friendly on the horsepower, and $9,000 on RPM. I mean, it's just wonderful.
Yeah.
Man, I really want to do this next year. But so we go to Phoenix, maybe the last race of the year, or Homestead, something like that. And Rick told me before we started, he said, listen, man, really appreciate it. But, our group of people back at HMS, we're really kind of targeting a younger driver. I'm like, okay, I understand. Because, again, when I was a rookie in 91, I was old, right? So I'm really old now. And but he's like, no. And but we're going to make it right. So when Rick says things, right,
he makes it right.
He means it, right?
Yeah.
But the unfortunate part was I knew I wasn't going to drive that car in 2003. So Brian Vickers got it. And what Rick meant by making it right was, and I think he influenced Clarence Brewer now to hire me to drive the 37.
Yeah, Timberwolf.
That Jeff Purvis. So Mark started in the 37, my brother. Then Jeff Purvis drove it. Unfortunately, got hurt. Then I got plugged in to drive it in 2003. Mm-hmm. So Rick was instrumental in that part of it, but he also was instrumental in not only coaching Ricky and helping Ricky. I was also a part of the test team with the new COT car that came out. So Rex Stump and myself and Lance McGrew and that whole test team, gosh, I tested for those guys for several years. But it all got kicked off and got in high gear when I went to drive the Bruco Xfinity car. We did the speedway races with the R&D team at Hendrick Motorsports, and we did R&D, right? Mm-hmm. And that was fine.
Yeah,
that was great. Now I'm cup racing again, right? With Hendrick Motorsports. So we continued doing our R&D testing, even though I'm driving for now Bruco in 2003, and we come out of the gates blazing. Jason Ratcliffe was crew chief.
Damn. Yep.
And Clarence had really built his program, thanks to Mark early on, right? Back home in Kentucky team and Timberwolf, and just I think we won 3 or 4 races that year. Mm-hmm. And got down to the very end, Well, I was leading the points. We were at Dover in the fall. And on lap 5, Scott Riggs got into me and turned me around, and I crashed out early and lost my point lead. So we fast forward going to Homestead. They just reconfigured the track.
Yep.
It's Brian and I, and Scott Riggs, I think, was close. Hornaday was close. 5 laps into practice, I think Brian had an issue, got in the wall. They had to go to a backup car. And so we're sitting there, the teams are parked at the garage like they do now. And, we had maybe 10 people on the team, 5, 6 full-time people. Mm-hmm. We're sitting over here watching the traffic in and out of the 5 team. Heck, they got more engineers than we had people, right? So I'm like, we're really up against the giant, right? Yeah. So got down to the end of the race with 50 to go and passed Brian. I think I had to beat Brian by 3 spots. Got around him, and then was a very challenging day, I'll say it this way, in passing Casey Mears for the position that I really needed, and ended up 1 position short. I think I lost the point, lost it by 12 points.
Damn it.
And dang it, in 96 driving the cat car, we lost it by 22 points. Mm-hmm. That's the O system, obviously. So I think every once in a while, if I could have gathered up about 30 some odd points, I could maybe have 3 rings, right? But it was a great time. And Rick said it at the end of the race. They're celebrating Brian winning the championship, and kind of put his arm around me and said, hey, I was going to win this championship one way or the other, whether it's you or Brian, which meant a whole lot, right? But yeah, a great time in my career there as well.
How do you wind your career down? How does that happen?
Well, we ended up finishing out my career for driving with Bruco. Mm-hmm. We Timberwolf 37, then with some regulations, Timberwolf had to leave the sport. Kleenex got involved. Mm-hmm. And here we go again. This is another sponsor, Jeff's. It's like how mirrored it seems like our careers might have been. But I know in 05 maybe we won Pikes Peak with Kleenex, and that was my last win. And then I think we maybe ran one more year. Then the team wanted to go a different direction. And then I went to I was still doing the R&D testing with Hendrick. And then kind of put together maybe a couple of one-offers. Tommy Baldwin had a deal we did a couple of races with one time. But I didn't do the start and park stuff like Jeff did.
No, yeah.
So I mainly resorted back to the testing with Hendrick. Then when Bobby Labonte went to drive the 47 Cup car, when Tad went Cup racing, I went over to Spot. So then I got in that spotting part of my career and spotted for a lot of great drivers in Cup and Xfinity. He spotted for you, I think, at Daytona one time, and I was a nervous wreck on that one. But you were good to me. You were kind. And hopefully I did okay. But, the spotting deal was kind of the step right out of the car where I could still get my driving fix, sort of. I felt like, at least Bobby and you and the good drivers I spotted for always made me feel like I was sitting in the car with them, right? And that was the fun part about spotting. So I still kind of kept my driving need there through that time. And then in 2012, still doing some testing, still spotting, John Darby approached me at Phoenix in the Cup garage and said, hey, might have an opening. Would you be interested in coming to work for us? And, my first thought is like everybody says, oh, man, you're going to work for the dark side. You're doing this, doing that. And I actually thought about it for a full year. Because, again, I knew that was going to be a big career change. But I accepted. And 1 year later, I told John, I said, count me in, let's do it. So I started mid-season of 14. And have always been a part of safety, car and driver stuff. Which, I got to work and be hands in hand with a lot of drivers I drove against and with. And then moving forward, working with John Padillac and Matt Harper and all the folks at R&D, Tom Gideon. Man, I learned so much. And then to be honest with you, being at the racetrack in that competitive environment, getting respected by my peers as far as guys I used to drive with, guys I didn't get to drive with, guys like yourself and just other teams, really fueled my fire, and it still does today.
Really?
I enjoy the heck out of my job. Now, the travel's tough.
Yeah.
But the company does a lot for us to get us around quickly. But I still love my job. I love to look at race cars. I love to look at race cars and how teams do things differently to get the same result. But also the fun part is how we've involved safety. And it didn't start with me, right? But John Padillac and the guys at R&D have really taken that to another level. And it's fun to be a part of that. And it's fun to have the camaraderie in the garage and the respect.
Yeah.
It means so much to me.
I think that the one thing, I mean, of course, I think we as drivers have a really hard time coming to terms with not driving a race car. The joy of competition, the joy of going down in the corner and your car rolls the center better, and you're going to throttle up and turn right up underneath this guy. That right there is exactly what is hard to let go of. But we will do it as long as we get to keep going to the track and it matter and us be an asset or a value to something. Like I never thought I was going to be a broadcaster, but when I found that avenue, like I didn't want to stop going to the track.
Right.
But I needed a reason to be there. Right. And I think that you found that same thing. In a very critical role. I've seen you walk around and work the garage, and the sport. I mean, your keen eye, of over the years looking at interiors and headrests and positioning and just being someone willing to walk over to a driver like a Joey Logano and say, hey, I'd really like it if that was about a half inch taller, or if that was a little bit this way or a little bit that. I think that's going to benefit you better and be safer. You can't put a value on that role. So I'm thankful that that's something that you found enjoyment in, because it plays such a critical part of keeping all of us on the racetrack and keeping us safe. Speaking of that, you talked about mounting seats. I know your brother Jeff told me a few things about mounting seats and tipping. Like one of the things that I jump in a race car way back when I'm young. I mounted the seat perfectly straight. That's the way I thought you're supposed to mount it. I get in the car. I'm driving cars for years. And I kept telling people the same thing. It's tipped over on the right front. Everything's great, but it just feels like it carries the left rear. It's tipped over on the right front. And Jeff told me to tilt the seat. He's like, well, if it feels that way, then tilt the seat. So from that moment on, and this was probably like late model stock, just right before I got into the Busch car. Yep. I started mounting the left side of the seat lower, or tilting the right side up, or if it's an insert, mounting the insert. All of my Hendrick stuff, if you were able to look at the insert, my body is tilted inside the insert, right? Yes. And it would take that sensation away of getting me, getting the car. It felt like it would give me the platform of the car that I wanted, but it was just kind of tricking my mind. Right. Were you particular about those types of? Oh, absolutely. And not that I stumbled across it, but back in the Mike Alexander days, right? So I had to, thank goodness we were the same size, or close to it. And I wasn't going to tell Mike, I got to move the seat for me, and you're going to suffer through the race for you, right? So I jumped in Mike's car, and that's where I got my trend going, is not only to have it tilted, but he had it turned. Damn.
Now, this is an oval. Yeah. A road course would be straight up.
Sure.
But he had it turned, and that kind of caught me off guard a little bit, like, why is he turning it? I get this part of it. And then also that put the steering wheel a little off center to the right.
Yep.
whole motion there.
Yeah.
So back to turning it to the left front tire, so to speak, or the A-post, it obviously puts your vision where you need it to be. And then I think one of the main factors as well is it straightens out your right leg.
Yeah.
And sitting in the garage, back when we used to have practice, we were waiting for spring changes, shock changes, all that stuff. My car was very uncomfortable sitting in the garage. But now when I got on the racetrack, it was comfortable because all these things being done, pedal location, steering wheel location, was ideal. Center of the corner. Because that's where I wanted to go the fastest, right? But it wasn't my idea. Mike Alexander led me that direction. And then I had a lot of pushback from teams and interior guys. That's why I wanted to be the interior guy. I just do it this way, right? But I got a lot of pushback, but I learned that from Mike. And that whole deal of now all of a sudden, because back in the day our cars traveled.
The bunch of Delta on the right front. You go in the corner.
And if you start up here, then just to me, keeping in mind the center of the corner is the most comfortable spot for you. Your foot wanted to go down because it wasn't all bound up. But I've had
guys get in my car even late in my career and go, like Bowman and Regan Smith, and go, I can't drive it like this. Sitting in the garage. I'm like, not going to feel good right here. But wait till we get down in the center of the corner at Charlotte. You're going to be everything's going to go where it's more,
Exactly.
Because I would actually, I'd build the headrest up. And so if you were sitting in the car, you almost had your head tilted a little bit. And you're thinking, this isn't good. I can't drive like this. But once you load and get everything going where it goes down into the corner after, 5 to 7 Gs down in the corner, whatever we're feeling there, maybe it's not that much. Everything's, now you're sitting straight up and down. So I always found that fascinating. I learned that from your brother, Jeff.
So we even use a lot of that mindset even today, right? With drivers watching, the Cup cars have high-speed cameras that look at the driver at all times. Unfortunately, in an instance, say Alex Bowman's yesterday, we look at that on what's happening. But just normal driving, right? So there's interesting things you see. Really quickly, a story, and you might have forgot this one. We're talking about seat location. The 83 car. You're going to drive at Charlotte. I forget what year it was. Going to drive at Charlotte. I was spotting for Landon when Landon was over here.
My white Navy 83. Right.
So you called me, said, hey, I'm going to run Charlotte over there in a couple weeks. I got the test on Monday. Can you go over and test? And I'm like, okay, I can go. So he said, go shop, make sure everything's all right in the seat. So same mindset. I got to drive it the way you drive it because you're going to race it, right? So I get in there, and that thing's kind of doing this number. So we ended up putting some padding behind my back, right? And I need to get up here and get where I can see. Because I was like a 70-degree angle. I wasn't laid back, right? And I, again, learned that from Mike. And I always thought, too, I'd throw out there for comical reasons would be they never can accuse me of not being up on the wheel. Because I'm up on that wheel before we start. So anyway, I put some padding in your seat. I get up there where I'm comfy. We go over there. And Rick Stump's over there, and I fire out. And I remember that it was the year that they had vacated the track. It was fast. God, it's fast. And but you had an appearance, so you couldn't go. And I was giggly and ready to do it. So we rode out. I came by one time, went through 1 and 2, got down to 3 and 4, and about in the middle of 3 and 4, that thing goes boop. It dropped down, and I'm looking at that wall off of 4 at Charlotte. And we were probably wide open. Kind of time frame, which we didn't like, right, as a driver. But anyway, come off turn 4, and that wall looked like it was that tall. And I'm like, I am going over this wall. When I stopped, I was in turn 1 of the quarter mile. I'm like, oh, boy, that hurt. Then I thought, oh, crap, I got to tell Dale Jr. I just wrecked his car. So I get out. I go down there, and I see Dr. Petty because I'm like, well, they brought me down there anyway. And he said, call me in a couple of days, make sure you're doing okay. And I felt okay then. And, man, about 3 days later, I'm like, whoa. So I go see him, and I think I'd just small fracture of a rib or two. And what had happened is a Butler-built seat. And I love those seats, right? But what I did wrong was I put about 1.5 inches or 2 inches of padding behind my back. and it took the rib from being here
to move it to the
move
side.
it back here.
Yeah. Ooh.
So I don't remember what you said when I called you or talked to you about wrecking your car, but we come to find out sway bar bolt
Holy
got into the inside of the tire. So the levitation of the
so
track.
fast it has so much tire deflection.
Yes.
Damn
Yes. So it's like, oh shoot. So that was a good lesson.
That was
on
always
seats
my
too.
fear of driving those cars back then. You'd run even the cup cars. We'd go to, in 03, 04, we'd go to Fontana or Atlanta, and you'd go out and run and come into the garage, and Tony Jr. and them would lift the hood, and the left front or the right front tire might have a damn 1 inch wide groove in it from where the fender
Had rubbed it.
had laid on top of the tire.
Yes. Or the fender strap.
The fender strap.
Yeah.
Right at the seam between the hood and the fender, there's a 1 inch strap that ran the entire length from the top of the hood all the way down to the hood pins.
Mm-hmm.
And that laid on top of that tire and cut this groove. They were traveling those cars just as far as they could get them.
Yeah.
Until that damn fender lay on that tire, and then they, and you'd see fenders with, the paint boiling off of the fender because the tire laying. And I remember I did go to Fontana. We go to Fontana off into turn 1, first lap of practice. Whoa, down into one, new tire, full throttle, back to the gas, and that right front tire exploded because that strap laid on that right front tire.
Yeah.
And I'm like, God, we can't keep doing this. Like, we got to figure something out.
Now, then when we had telemetry, I did a test out there with the COT car, and it was early morning, and we made a couple laps there, and came in. You're looking at the data and stuff like that, and it's like, how fast was we running down there? Like, end at one is like 2:04 or something like that. I'm like, after that, I think I slowed up a couple tenths the rest of the day.
Me and Latart went to Michigan to test, and this was in 14. Mm-hmm. They just paved the track maybe a couple years before that. But we were tire testing, and we're out there, Biffle's out there, a couple of us, and I'm running. We're on a 20-lap run, and it's near wide open.
Fast.
And I come in the pits, and I'm like, Steve, I'm just going to tell you, between me and you, I ain't even close to what we can do.
Right.
I was like, I'm not going to be
not today.
Not today on a tire test for Goodyear.
Right.
But like the last lap of every run, I just do what it could do, and it'd be like half a second faster. But I just wasn't willing to run it like that for 20 laps. Were you the driver that won Bristol when Mark Martin pulled off the racetrack?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. What did you think about that? Did you think they were going to walk into the victory lane and maybe tell you that they were going to give Mark his win?
No. My memories right there of that day were we were coming on strong at the end of the race, right? With 50 to go, I might have got into second right there. Mark was leading. As you well know, Mark was
Winn-Dixie car.
That Winn-Dixie car and Mark were tough to beat everywhere we went. And he was the gauge, right? He was the bar. So I'm chopping into his lead there a little bit, and I kept thinking like, okay, it looks like I'm going to catch him. Now I'm trying to size up where I can pass him because that's going to be the tough part. But as we well know, Mark was one of the most clean and respected drivers out there that I knew if I could get there, it was going to be fine, right? So I got pretty close, and then caution come out. And so we're driving around through there, and nobody saying anything on my radio. Now, the thing that I remember the most was when we were rolling into rolling through 3 and 4, coming off of 4, pace car still out on the track. Mark peels off.
Yeah.
And it still didn't hit me quite then, but what did hit me was pace car still on track. So
damn wonder you didn't follow him.
Right. That comment's been made.
Yeah.
I never thought that. so I obviously stayed out, right? We come back around, we got to checker that lap. Heck, I stayed on the track another lap. I'm like, I'm not coming off till y'all tell me to get off. So then the other interesting part of that is, now if Mark had turned off the track and Victory Lane would have been down there where normal Victory Lane is,
he would have been there
was still
before
wanting
you.
to race,
Oh.
even though he's on pit road.
Yeah.
That was what was told to me. But obviously Victory Lane being in the middle of 3 and 4. But I was like, whoa, what's just happening, right? Number one, I was very proud of how we ran that day.
Sure.
And to run second to Mark Martin was going to be like a win to me, right? And we were in it for the long haul for the championship. And but then I think that the coolest thing for me after that weekend, or as it was ending up right there, was the interview I saw that Mark did. They interviewed Mark, and he's like, dumbest thing I ever did in my life, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
He's really hard on himself. But he said, I've been rooting for David Green to win, but not quite like that.
Yeah.
But, so to me, that total respect from Mark, right? But that was an interesting one. But as I say, somebody had to be there, right?
Yeah, it was going to be somebody.
I was very proud of my team that day, and we were strong.
Yeah.
It'd have been nice to have been able to try to pass him.
Yeah, not many people ask your side of that afternoon. We've heard from Mark on that a few times because we still like to remind him of it.
Oh, yeah.
You talked about spoilers that might bend a little bit in the wind. I walked into the shop one day when Jeff was driving. I think they're getting ready for the very first race together in Daytona, and Jeff was on the bench welding aluminum for the rear spoiler.
Right.
And it had to be welded all the way across, but he welded it in little stitches, and then he would put JB weld to look like aluminum welds in the rest of those gaps, hoping that would make it flex a little bit. Good. Jeff was aggressive when he could be. He didn't mind pushing the limits of the rule book. And I know you're a NASCAR official these days, but we love talking about innovation in this in this room. Is there anything from your own career, anything that you created, any rule that you might have manipulated, or anything that might not have? Maybe you wrote a new rule. Was there anything that you ever done that you thought was pretty clever?
Well, I have to say this, with working at Bobby Labonte Racing, it wasn't then. It wasn't then. I can promise you that. Yeah. And the other teams I work for, obviously, Wayne Days, building cars for customers, and we were straight and narrow. I think the only one I can think of, Dale, and with more time I could probably think, I thought the deal with Jeff on the spoiler was pretty cool, right?
I did too.
I think there'd been some talk of, back at that Filmar car at one time, maybe some brake calipers and the lower control arms to kind of jack the car up and down, after inspection, da-da-da-da. But I'd say probably the biggest one and we didn't actually do it, we actually found out about it. So, Mike had those Busch Series cars. Yep. We brought it up to Wayne's. We, we were kind of copying the body and going from there and this and that. So when we built the Daytona, 1991 Daytona Busch car for Filmar for me to drive, that we sat on the pole with, we kind of copied off of some of those cars that Mike had. So they had real glass. Front glass was real. Yeah. And you remember those days. And we had chipped the glass in that car at Daytona and cracked it, right? That was the issue there. They'd get chipped and cracked. So we was going to replace that for either Talladega or the following Daytona. Mm-hmm. And I remember like, oh, yeah, you just call down here to the Oldsmobile Buick store and just order a front windshield for a 1991 Oldsmobile. So we ordered one. They shipped it up to Wayne Days. We unboxed it, and we've got the car right there. We had no damage in the race other than windshields broke. So we pulled the windshield out of the box to put in the car. You know where I'm going, right? this thing is like 2 inches too wide. Like, So maybe we sent us the wrong, model car or whatever. No, sure enough. So the windshield was trimmed down for that car, right? And that's prior to some rules here, there, and yonder. And but probably the thing that I was more involved with that was probably skirting around was that same particular car. When we went to the Daytona for the race, Kip McCord, team manager, he says, so we went through the routine at the shop on inspecting the car.
Yeah.
And Kip's like, hey, David, he says, when they go to measure the door top on this car up here behind the A-post, he said, I want you on the other side of whatever the official is that's checking that measurement. And more than likely, he's going to shoot you the tape measure through the car. Then when you're on the right side of the car, he's probably going to be on the left. I want you to cut that thing 2 inches. What do you mean cut it 2 inches? Like extend it past.
Yeah.
Don't hook it on the edge. What happened, that car was narrow. Windshield's narrow.
Yeah.
But the windshield part of it, obviously they didn't have a template back then for that windshield. But the door top measurement was one they physically did. So I'm like, oh my gosh, you're going to put me over there? He said, yeah. They, anything drivers do, they believe what drivers do, right? So he put me right into the fire right off the get-go. So, they measured it, and I cut it, and it was right on the rule.
That's awesome.
So,
yeah, I know that wasn't that uncommon. Darrell Waltrip and Junior Johnson, they built
all those cars
that they were narrow as hell.
Yeah. Which, as we know, prompted templates, right?
Yeah.
And I think
there was just an overall back in those days.
Correct. And I think
from nose to tail.
You asked the question, maybe it's something I did that prompted a rule. Not that I necessarily did it, but Tony Stewart was the same way. You were a little bit the same way as we put the tilt. We put the tilt back in the seat, which then got our helmets closer to the row bar, closer to the door bars. On any left side hits, which we know we've seen those, and those aren't good. That prompted actually our new Cup car. I carry around a gauge that we check to make sure that no matter whether you have tilt in the seat or you have tilt in the insert, which is typically what guys do on the Cup side, is set the seat straight, then do your tilt with the insert. But anyway, what we want to do is always maintain a measurement from a common spot on the door bars.
Yes.
That makes sure, in short, of the helmet will always compress the headrest foam and do a lot of compressing on your headrest foam on the left side before it ever reaches the padding on the halo.
Right.
Without that rule, and a guy leaning really hard.
Oh, yeah.
Your helmet is going to...
You're all in that. You're all in that halo. That's why I always...
And you missed a headrest.
That's why I always tried to get laid back. It was really not so much that I liked the profile. I'd love to actually be sitting up straighter in my cars through the years, but I did not want to be anywhere near that halo bar.
Correct.
And I always, every time I would get in my cars in the shop and sit down, I put that helmet on, and the first thing I did was tilt my head over and measure this.
Measure that, yes.
Just move my hand around and go, okay, that's good enough, because that was that headrest foam can move and compress, but that halo bar ain't going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere. and obviously your dad never had that issue, right? He was always slow.
Yeah. I wanted to end this conversation with giving you a chance to talk about your son, Austin. He's been racing in the Trans Am Series and now the Xfinity Series as well. It's been fun watching him work his way up through the ranks. I know he's worked hard to get the minimum opportunities he's had, but he's done some amazing work with all of those.
Thank you.
How stressful, I suppose, is it being a dad, not only watching him out there on the track, believing in his abilities, understanding the challenges he faces to prove himself. You're in the thick of the industry. While that might give you some opportunities to keep the conversation going every day, you also have to keep your mind on your role, your responsibilities, and not be distracted by him being at the racetrack trying to compete. How do you manage all of that?
Well, that's the last part there is very tough. Very tough. But, the folks at NASCAR, very supportive of watching him participate and allowing me to be a part of those weekends where maybe I don't have to work the Xfinity race. I can just be there as be a dad. But I always just be a dad and work at the same time. But very challenging. I know early on, we had our bandos, we had our legend cars, and trying to want to do it myself and give him the best opportunity. Then you plug in a guy like Timmy Latica and Cheryl that gives him an opportunity to drive their legend car. Then watching him drive some equipment that's not ours, not mine. I just kind of get back to look at it. I really didn't see a truer picture of Austin and his abilities, right? And not that I ever said, hey, you're going to be a race car driver. But what I wanted to do is, like, if he could really do it, and prior to him driving Timmy Latica's legend car, I gave him many opportunities to not fail, but just to stumble, because either I didn't know the tricks to do on a legend car and stuff like that. But he always rose to the top. So then that's another confidence you have, right? But also an issue, right? Like, now we got to find him another rider going up the ladder. So there for a while, I really thought that I've not done a good job as a dad, based on my career, my brothers, our family. I haven't done a good job of putting Austin in the right spot, whether that's, setting money aside. And again, during our era, the money was not like it is now, or even in the late 2000s. Yeah. But nonetheless, I just thought, man, I haven't done a good job. And man, that's tough as a dad.
Yeah.
And I know you're finding that out with your kids now in other aspects, right? So Timmy Latica took Austin to another level in legend car. Boom, they were winning, and every challenge that Austin met, he met that and surpassed it. So I was very proud of him. I never got to go to college. Neither my brothers. I always say my education past high school was racetrack. Mm-hmm. So I was so proud of him. Went to App State, graduated, 4 years of college, done a great job. And then I always told him, like, you do that first, then we'll worry about the rest of it. Then count my blessings each day that Mr. Doug Peterson came along with TA2, gave him a shot to drive his TA2 car. And then Mr. Peterson said, hey, I want to give Austin an opportunity and show him to the world. And man, I can't thank the good Lord for that opportunity that Doug gave him, and then to put him out there, right, for people to see. And I think all I ever wanted was just give him an opportunity.
Yeah.
Just put him in that element, and no matter how big, small, and see what can happen. And gosh, he's made me proud. So, but then, 2 years ago, last year, when Mr. Peters decided to take his team to go Xfinity racing, I'm like, oh, wow, this is a big jump. Do you guys really know? And I'm like, yeah, we got. So they obviously did road course racing as their profession, and that's where they went on the Xfinity side. Bought a couple cars from RCR, and man, they did really good. One of the neatest things, Richard Childers, at COTA on Sunday. So Austin's first Xfinity race on road course was COTA last year, and so I saw RC on Sunday, and he probably saw my smile a mile away, right? Austin ran 7th in his first race.
Yep.
And RC's like, he said, I had to ask one of my boys yesterday, who's that 32 car? And whoever said, well, that's Peterson Racing, Jordan Anderson Racing. Like, who's driving that thing? And they's like, Austin Green. Like, is that David's son? So what a proud moment, right? And I'm like, Richard really it just made me feel so blessed that Austin was able to go put that race together. So fast forward, he had a great race at Sonoma. Just things were really good. And then, Mr. Peterson's like, hey, I want to do more of these, do some oval stuff, and ultimately think about going full time. So what a blessing. Thank Mr. Peterson every day for this opportunity. And then to me, and I kind of tell Austin after the fact, it's like, hey, there's a lot of pressure. This particular day you had to go out and not only make the race, but just be respectful to the other drivers. Because one day that's going to be reversed. Little did I know that one day was the same day as first race. And I was so proud of how he respected other drivers and the comments I hear on a Sunday, from Kyle Larson to Justin Allgaier. I mean, it's just everybody, right? So proud. And but very, what do we do now, right? And as you well know, it's not like back in the day to where you saw that talent. And I tell Austin all the time, like, things go full circle. Yes, we need sponsors. We always have to work towards that. But you just be yourself, do the right things. And no matter whether you win, lose, or draw, it's all about how you get there. And, most recently, he won the ARCA race at Charlotte. And whether he had won or he ran second, because very good equipment, Shane Huffman, those guys, PPG, top-notch stuff. But that adds to the pressure, right? And I hung out all day on top of the truck with Shane and Connor Mozak, and just being a dad, listen-only radio, no talking.
Sure.
I was just so impressed on Shane and the team, and listen to Connor and Austin talk after practice. But Dale, if he'd ran second or third or fourth or fifth, I'm still proud of how he navigates, right? And to me, that's going to get him further than, because we know we can't win them all. And but yeah, just very proud. I hope, I just hope that the little momentum will keep going, and he'll just get a shot.
Yeah,
and that's all we can ask. So.
That's right. Well, I think he's certainly got a lot of people's attention.
Well, I appreciate that. It's a nice feeling to have that, that he does the right things on the racetrack, and that it's equated into with his speed and getting good finishes. So.
Well, we can't wait to see him get more opportunities. Austin's out there, grinding for every chance he can and making the most of them. Those top 10 runs in that Xfinity car are extremely impressive, knowing the limited amount the team runs and the limited amount of opportunities he's had behind the wheel. Those races, especially at COTA and the road courses, get chaotic at the end, and his ability to just kind of quietly navigate to get the result is probably the one, because you just expect the rookies just to get swept right up into those moments, and overextend themselves late in those races. Sharp little racer. This has been a fun conversation, man.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. I think we could go on and on and on, right? I think, but from the time that, Bobby kind of put me through that learning process, and hey, now you're going to drive, to the toughness of our sport as we all race together, talking about my brothers, what your dad did for Jeff and the opportunities he gave me, and what we learned from all that, right? And then lastly, I think from Owensboro, Kentucky, at one time there was maybe 8 or 9 drivers, if you count Jeremy and David Keith that had run ARCA. It was Jeremy's stepbrother, but there was like 8 or 9 crew guys, or 12 crew guys from Owensboro. So very proud of what Owensboro's done with NASCAR, but super proud, I know, like we talked in the beginning, right? I didn't know if it was going to be past the next go-kart race, right?
Yeah.
Or what class that might be. But then get an opportunity in NASCAR All-American Challenge, then the Busch Series, and then fortunate enough to win a championship. And then knowing Mark would have had that same shot if the right opportunity would happen. But then fast forward and little brother Jeff wins one. So to share those accomplishments, so very proud.
Yeah. Well, we're thankful. Yeah. I'm thankful to have the chance to talk to you, to get to know you better, for everybody else to enjoy this story. is a fun conversation.
Thank you.
And we love seeing you at the racetrack. We love you being a part of the industry and everything that everybody's lives you've impacted as an inspector. Again, we can't put a value on the job that you've done there, and it's awesome to have people in the garage on that side, the dark side, as you say, that have drove race cars, that have been behind the wheel, that understand what the competitor's thinking and dealing with and challenged with. Because we look at you and go, he's one of us. He'll understand. He knows what I'm dealing, and you have a lot of grace. But we appreciate you. See you at the racetrack here, I guess, this weekend in Mexico.
Absolutely, and I promise you, and I hope I get to send you more proud dad text. And
yes.
I appreciate sharing those good things. But thanks, Dale. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. David Green on the Dale Jr. Download. All right, so that was a great conversation with David Green. I really enjoyed that, man. Looking through our notes that the team, Bobby Marcos and Andrew, have compiled. I got a group here that helps me be able to sit down here and do this as well as we do it. And they do an amazing job. I know I was around David. I know what his career was like, but those little moments like at the test with Ricky Hendrick and just even stuff I'd forgotten. Him testing my Xfinity car. I totally forgot about that. So just, and listening to, I guess, the challenges of racing with your brothers and all three of you trying to make it to the top, or at least as far as you can go. Pretty compelling. David is a great guy, salt of the earth, and great race car driver, really fun race car driver to be around on the racetrack. Still today doing good things in this sport. As an inspector, I know he's got several roles and has had probably many responsibilities over the years, but one of the things that I've always appreciated about him was he was one of those individuals that actively roamed the garage and nitpicky about all of the safety aspects of the interior of the car. He wants to see that headrest. He watches every driver get inside the car, buckle in, and then he looks and sees kind of where their head's positioned according to where the headrest may be, and are they getting all of the benefits that can provide, and which is so important these days. But so we need people like that want to do that job and want to have passion for it, and he does. So we're thankful for that. And I mentioned about his brothers, Mark and Jeff, two great dudes. I would say I'm thankful to be friends with all of them, and they all have a very similar salt of the earth, polite, do it the right way. They're never going to cross you or do something that you're going to go, man, why did you choose that? Just nice people and racers, really good hardcore racers that have been, that have worked on their own cars, tuned on their own cars. They know every aspect of this industry. There's not a lot of people like that around these days. Pretty cool. So a lot of fun for me. Hope y'all enjoyed that conversation. David Green, he's been involved in this sport forever. He's the kind of person you need to know about and learn about. It's time for the white flag. The Teardown was live after the race on Sunday on YouTube and Twitter. If you haven't already subscribed to the Dirty Mo Media YouTube page, you need to do that. You'll get the notifications that the Teardown is live, right? Everybody's telling us how they're loving the post-race shows that we're giving you from Amazon. Well, you can continue that experience by tuning into the Teardown live after these races every single Sunday. And make sure you subscribe to Dirty Mo Media on YouTube. The notification comes in, boom, the Teardown is live, and you can jump right in and be part of the conversation. Actions Detrimental taped on Monday with Denny Hamlin. Always fun hearing from Denny, particularly after he wins races when he's in such a great mood. I give him a hard time for being in kind of a down mood every now and then. He says you can't really tell when he's in a bad mood, and I disagree. I can tell within about a word or two whether Denny's in a Denny mood or in a good mood. Shout out to Denny Bros for the win this weekend. I know they're all happy. Door Bumper Clear also dropped on Monday. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. come by to talk about a lot of things. He's had a great year up until Nashville. We'll talk about that. He talks about it with the team about Hocevar and all that, how that all went down. And you won't want to miss that. But obviously we did Dirty Air yesterday with TJ Majors. Had a lot of great conversations. Went in depth about a lot of things going on with Michigan. Previewing the next race with the Dirty Modo gang for Mexico. Just a great conversation, a lot of fun. And Herman Schrader and Speed Street also are dropping on today. So if you love Herman Schrader, you want to hear some Speed Street, we'll have all that out for you as well this week. So then you got Bless Your Heart. Man, we got a lot going on. Me and Amy are not going to be doing the show this week together. I've got to go to Mexico. And so Amy's going to have a special guest come in. She's already had a show where she had a friend of hers come on. Everybody seemed to really enjoy the conversation. I'm hoping, I don't know who's going to be her guest, but I'm kind of hoping it's one of my friends. Somebody like TJ, that she can give me kind of ask a lot of questions of why was it the way it was for so long. I thought that might be kind of fun, but we'll see. I'm anxious as you are as to who will be the guest, special guest on Bless Your Heart this week. So look forward to the race in Mexico. And as for me, I'm done. I will see y'all next week at Dirty Air on Tuesday.